So now we're live. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Here's Thomas. Here's Fiedler Audio. Here's Mr. Thomas Fiedler.
Hello.
Good evening. Hello.
Good evening.
Now finally it's working.
Yes.
It's always a couple of buttons that show up while you think you're already live. So, but now finally the stream is on. Wonderful. I just said that the promises we made during the last streams now are real. The tutorial template of the bus system in our logic session we talked about is now available in the knowledge base download section on the Fiedler Audio website. It's beneath the Dolby Atmos composer. And also the ADE track created with the artist Jessin from the show at the Dolby Atmos house at the Amsterdam Dance event is now available as a full download. So there's the Ableton session of the full track with all the beams and the Dolby Atmos composer set, and even a little bit of mastering with the help of Gravitas. So go to the website, get the stuff, and get familiar with it. And speaking of mastering session, today is completely about compressing and dynamics controls for Dolby Atmos mixing on the various tracks, and also, of course, in the end, in the mastering section. And Thomas Fiedler has prepared something for you guys today to show you the only way that makes sense to handle dynamics for Dolby Atmos mixing. So without any further ado, I'll hand over to Mr. Thomas Fiedler.
Thank you.
Who will get into the nitty-gritty details for us.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Well, just to start with the whole topic, there are actually 4 ways of somehow tackling the topic of compressing your Atmos mix or doing some kind of bus compression. The first way of doing it is something which already some mixing engineers are doing. Mixing engineers who don't own Dolby Atmos Composer and Gravitas, which we will talk a little bit later about. They basically do a stereo fold down of their Atmos mix, or of their Atmos mix in progress, so if you will, and then re-import the stereo version or mono version, whatever, and then they use it as a source for external sidechaining everything they want to compress. So basically what they do, let's say they have an Atmos mix with 50 channels. So they have one bed and they have a few objects, and then they put compressors on each and every of these tracks, which go to Atmos, and they take this stereo track, the stereo fold down of the Atmos mix, use it as a sidechain to as a trigger signal, basically, for triggering all the compressors. That way they basically get kind of a linked compression of the entire mix, but it's a very tedious process because you have to work with lots of compressors. You have to instantiate them and every single track one by one, and whenever you want to change something in the signal which triggers the compression, you have to do another fold down with a changed signal, and most probably you don't want to take the whole mix as a trigger. Maybe you want to just run some part, or a mix which is a bit changed, so that, for example, the drums are not triggering too much. So this is the first way, basically. I won't go into detail and I won't show it how it is done here, because I consider it to be a tedious workaround, which is quite limited in its possibilities. Okay, so the second way is something which at first glance might look very promising, And this is a plugin called SAMP from the company Hornet. And to just give you a quick show about it, I will share my screen. Here we go. This is the screen. Now you see a quite empty Reaper session. I have basically 2 identical tracks. And these tracks are put in a way. I just created a small loop here. If I just play it, you will hear it's basically a complete mix in stereo. So looping nicely. Now both tracks are identical. So I will now switch or flip the phase on one. So if I play now, it becomes perfectly silent. So you see the meters are jumping up and down, but on the output there's nothing, just because the phase on the second channel is flipped. Now, why do I do this? Because I want to make a point about this plugin. It's that one here. Let me just, it just opened up on the second track. So this is the compressor part. This is the instance of the first session, and this is the instance on the second track. They are identical, completely identical. They have the identical settings. So now, and they are set to work independently of each other. So if I hit play, you will hear still nothing. So as you can see, there is something going through, and yeah. So for those among you who know the SAMP, you should know that on this left side you can, according to the manufacturer, you can have up to 160 instances of SAMP, and you can select which of these tracks go to the trigger, basically which of these tracks will trigger the signal. So if I click the first track, then this will be the trigger for the compression in both plugins. So it's basically, the idea is to streamline the workflow, which I described in track in example, or in example number 1, in version, or how to say, in the way of doing it, number 1, where you have one stereo track as a trigger for all your compressors on the different Atmos channels. And supposedly you can do this with SAMP by just selecting. So you can basically put up to 160 compressors on different places throughout your session, and then compress everything by selecting as many of these instances as the source, which then will be combined as a sidechain signal to all the compressors. But watch what happens now. Or better said, listen. You're hearing artifacts. That means both compressors are not compressing equally. Now, why is this? The problem here is the following. There is a conceptual flaw in it, which the manufacturer of the plugin will not be able to solve. And this is the problem that we have 2 channels here, and Reaper, in this case, the DAW or any DAW, can decide in which order to process these channels. They are processed simultaneously, or the DAW can select to process one channel first and then the second one. It all depends on the internal behavior of the mixing engine of the DAW. And in bigger and more complex sessions, this can vary at any time. So, and the DAW's audio engine is always trying to optimize everything, so to use as the CPU with the different cores as efficiently as possible. And since this way of using the sidechain in Hornet Samp is doing something similar as what we do in the Dolby Atmos Composer and Spacelab universe, so to say, circumventing the DAW's mixing engine by sending audio from one plugin to the other directly. You have to take this into account. Otherwise, you're getting artifacts. This is also the reason why when some people contact us and say, I have a mixing session, I employed your Dolby Atmos Composer and the beams in the positions, but I'm getting audio artifacts. Then I always tell them, check your routing, because you need to make sure that all beams are processed before they actually go into the composer, so that all audio from the beams arrive in time at the composer. Otherwise, the timing is not working anymore. So, and since sidechaining is a timing sensitive operation, the audio signal has to arrive in time into the compressor, so that the composer actually reacts on time and the compression works properly. This is the concept of SAMP, as well, as great as the idea sounds in the beginning, will not work, except if the developer of this makes an effort to create something to synchronize. But I highly doubt that it is possible, because compared to the composer is different. The composer processes everything in one point in the composer, but this the SAMP is supposed to compress everything in place. Wherever the compressor is, it should supposedly compress that in place. So you get like timing paradoxes when you try to synchronize everything. I didn't even try to put something with latency before one of these compressors to see if it correctly like compensates for the latency of plugins before that. But as promising as this is looking, it is not working, and it will never work because of the concept behind a multi-threading DAW audio engine. So unfortunately, this gets discarded. Okay, number 3, which Dolby told me I should not forget, is the Dolby Atmos album assembler. The Dolby Atmos album assembler has a limiter built in. Well, first problem, it only works on mixes which are already mixed. So you can only load in ADM files and then use the limiter. Well, and second, it's just a limiter. If you open up the window, you can see you have basically 4 parameters you can adjust. You can threshold, attack, and release, and that's it. So there's not even a ratio you can adjust, because, well, it's not a compressor. It is a limiter, so I guess it's a very high ratio or even infinite, just to really do something like brick wall limiting. And so, yeah, it's an extremely limited thing. It only works on ADM files, so you can basically also discard it, especially in mixing workflows. So number 1 is discarded because of a tedious workflow, which was the sidechain, the manual sidechain compression thing. Second was SAMP, which is discarded because of the technical flaw, which is unsolvable at the way they want to do it. And the album assembler is also discarded because first it's just a limiter, and it's also only working on already created ADM BWF files. So, well, what can I say? There's only one solution. Let's go back here and let's open up a very tiny Dolby Atmos mixing sessions. It's just a few tracks here, and on each track is just a Dolby Atmos beam, and on the left side you can see the master track where the Dolby Atmos composer sits. It's receiving all the different instruments and vocals as separate beams. For those among you who are new to the Dolby Atmos Composer. It's a Dolby Atmos mixing solution for any DAW on any operating system, Windows or Mac. And it works by circumventing the routing engine or the mixing engine of the DAW, and thereby enabling any DAW, even if it's just a stereo DAW, to become a full-fledged Dolby Atmos mixing system. So it consists of two plugins. One is the Dolby Atmos Beam. It looks like this. It's basically a panner, and you have your incoming channels as objects. You can pan them around, then they all arrive here in the composer. For the sake of this presentation, I converted all the incoming connections to objects so that we can easily see what's going on. And the Dolby Atmos composer has a very fancy feature called the master channel. The master channel is like a master track in a DAW, and it sits right in front of the Dolby Atmos renderer. So the Dolby Atmos renderer, I'm not speaking about the Dolby Atmos renderer application from Dolby, but I'm speaking about the Dolby Atmos renderer, which is built into the Dolby Atmos composer. It's licensed by Dolby. It's built into, so you get exactly the same result as with any other Dolby Atmos workflow, if you feed it the same stuff, of course. So it's legit Dolby Atmos, and right in front of the renderer is sitting the master channel. The master channel contains of three things. It's basically the channel itself, where you can plug in some modules, and you have a loudness measurement section, and you have the master gain, which is like the fader, which this is the last part before the renderer. So with the master gain you can easily adjust the level of your mixing session to fit to match the requirements of the distributor. Okay, I have added one instance of Gravitas MDS, which is our super duper intergalactic compressor for Dolby Atmos. Let me open the editor. This is the editor, and as you can see, it has a ton of features. This is the only compressor on the planet which is capable of processing up to 128 channels, which you would need if you have such a big Dolby Atmos session and you want to compress the entire Atmos mix. But you're not limited to that. So since this is not just a limiter, but it's a full-fledged dynamics processor, so you have all the different options of actually working on your mix. Okay, so as you can see, it's just one click to instantiate one of the compressors into the master channel. It's very easy to start with, and you have immediate access to the entire Dolby Atmos mix. And to really fine-tune how the compressor reacts, the first feature which is really important in the Gravitas is the input configuration. This is the input configuration, and you got a lot of options to really customize how Gravitas reacts to your Dolby Atmos mix. First, we have the upper section. This is the detector input mixer. So as the name implies, all this stuff on the upper part goes into the detector. That means this determines how Gravitas reacts, how Gravitas is processing, basically. No? So let's switch it. Let's leave that off. So what you can see here, the composer communicates to Gravitas the tracks. Not only the amount of tracks, but you also can see here of every of these incoming connections, you can see the names. So you can easily identify which of the tracks you are changing when you change something here. The mixer itself consists of faders where you can increase or decrease the volumes of the signal going into the detector. So for example, if we want to lower the impact of the acoustic drums, we just pull them a little bit down according to taste, so that the acoustic drums actually trigger the compressor less. So, and we of course can also exclude them completely. by deselecting them at the bottom. By default, everything is selected, letting you compress or process the entire Atmos mix by default, but you can customize it as much as you want. And on the bottom, we have the input selector. The input selector basically determines what or which channels of your Atmos mix you actually want to process. So you can exclude whatever channels you want. Let's say you don't want to tackle the pianos, so you just can just exclude them from the compression, or you leave everything, or you turn everything off and just select the let's say just select the piano, and you turn everything off here and just select the acoustic drums. So in this configuration, your acoustic drums compress, or the signal from the acoustic drums triggers the compressor, and then the piano gets compressed accordingly. With that, you can do some kind of ducking effects. So let's reset that and give it a play. Now you will see Gravitas in action, and here. So as you can hear and see, it's processing the entire Dolby Atmos mix. I intentionally set it to something, to some settings where you can hear it a little bit pumping, so that you become aware of the actual processing. Because, I mean, Gravitas can be set to be really subtle and also to be compressing really heavy, just depending on your needs. And usually, well, of course, if you do some bus compressing, or if you use it in mastering, you usually use some very soft settings just to give it the final touch. But since you can also compress different select channels, you can also use them as like for group processing. Like, let's say you brought your drums into your Dolby Atmos mix as separate objects, like you have the bass drum object, the snare object, and the hi-hats object, the overheads and whatnot. So you have them as separate objects. You can place them differently in the Dolby Atmos mix, but you just want to select the drums as a group. Then you just can, as I showed before, you can select them here in the input configuration, and well, do your processing, and you can compress them as you would compress drums, not a whole mix. Okay. Let's do it a little more extreme to show you the effect. That's without the drums. That is with the drums. Triggering. As I turn up the drums, you can hear. This isn't, just to remember, this is not the mixer of the drums as they are passing through the compressor, but this is really just the detector input. So as you could hear, when I turn up the drums, that means the volume of the drums becomes much louder, going into the detector, triggering the compressor way stronger than the rest of it. This is just one quick example of all the different infinite possibilities you can have with the input configuration. So now, next thing. Gravitas is a really sophisticated dynamics processor. What do I mean by that? Well, you can use all 4 types of dynamic processing on your material. So let's just reset it to the default -18 dB. Currently, we are we are using the parameters for above threshold processing. So whenever you change the ratio, you can compress or expand above the threshold. But there's a second set of parameters. When I switch to this, then the parameters become violet. And now you can do this below the threshold. That means sometimes you just want to leave all the transients intact. You just say, okay, it's really perfect. All the transients working very nicely. So I will just put this to, let's type it in 1. So this is completely linear, and I just want to raise a little bit the lower signals so that the mix becomes more dense, while really leaving all the transients which are above the threshold intact. So I can just raise it a little bit here. And yeah, let me just show you how it sounds. Lower volume. Bypassed. On. Bypass, but we have to lower it a little bit. Without. Well, okay, one has to fiddle around a little bit with the threshold to find the right spot, but you in the low volume part you can hear that it actually raises the volume. Bypassed. Off. So it becomes louder below the threshold. Yeah, the reason why it's not doing something in the louder part is that, lo and behold, on the lower right section we have two very important controls. The link control and the peak mode. Well, link we all know from all compressors. Usually as a switch you can turn linked on or linked off. If it's off, it's working like a multi-mono. If it's on, all signals are summed together, which are going into the detector, so that all channels are compressed with one in the same way. Now, the link in the Dolby Atmos composer is not just a button. You can gradually change how strongly all the compression of the different channels is linked. And you have a second one. This is the peak mode, and peak mode means if it is at 100%, like it is now, it works like any other linked compressor. It detects the highest signal from the summed signal, which goes into the detector, and that determines the compression. If it's at 0%, like this, it will take the average. Average means like it measures each and every incoming channel which goes into the detector and takes the average level of it. That means this will result in a very much softer compression. So that, for example, when you have the drums will now not trigger that much the overall compression if the peak mode is at 0%. But this I will show in a minute. Let's go back to the link. If I turn the link down, then you will see that when we now play, then you will actually hear more of the effect of the below threshold compression. Let's have a look. I will play first bypassed, And then I will turn, in the middle of it, I will turn the bypass on. Bypass on. Oh, compression off. Now off again. So as I was switching bypass on and off, you could see or hear what actually changed. No? And of course you have to be careful in a spatial audio mix, in a Dolby Atmos mix, which is distributed spatially across lots of speakers or across the 3D space around you. Why? Because if you turn link off, then every channel gets compressed in a different way. That means if you overdo it, the spatial balance can start to become shaky or wobble or whatever. So, well, you need to know what you're doing, and you need to listen carefully. You not only check the overall compression, but also check, does the spatial image still sound as you want. But it is an option. Sometimes you want to do something very, let's say something very subtle, and sometimes you might just want that the link is off. In many stereo mastering chains, you can find that the stereo master or the stereo mix is compressed with link off, just to give it a little bit more width, a little bit more life, if you will. It's not not a strictly sterile compression, but the two channels just behave a little bit different. You give it a little more life. So you have this option. Okay, now let's check the peak mode. Let's just reset this for now and go back to compressing above the threshold. Let's put link on. Peak mode only works when for the part which is linked. So if link is 0%, then peak mode will have no effect, obviously, because peak mode describes how the channels are linked, and if they are not linked, well, there's nothing to describe. Okay, let's listen again with drums, and I will show you. I will just put back the drums to really give us a hard compression, so that we can listen what is the difference of the peak mode. Very hard compression. You see that there's some compression, but not as much as with peak mode. So as we can hear, when I turn peak mode down, the compression was reduced. Why? Because now it just takes the average signal of all channels. So the drums, which I just intentionally cranked up like crazy here, more than 20 dBs here, they don't have so much influence over the overall compression. So this can become in handy if you really want to do some subtle stuff, and you don't want just the peaks to trigger the whole thing very rapidly, but you want to have a more balanced kind of reaction. So let's reset this quickly here. And yeah, then of course, well, since we don't have an LFE in the moment, but this can be remedied, let's just set one of the beams to be mixed to the composite instead of being an object. So when we look here, now we have the composite. The composite is basically a bed together with some dynamic objects which are just kept in fixed space to circumvent basically the bed limitation of Dolby Atmos. Dolby Atmos can have only up to 712 as a bed layout, But since Dolby Atmos supports 916 as a physical speaker layout, it makes sense that you can actually pan to all these speakers, like in a bed. And so the composite, which combines these, comes in handy, giving you the possibility to pan onto the full 916 layout. And this, of course, contains an LFE. So if you have an LFE, let me see. Yeah, everything shows up here right now. So you can see the LFE here. And you can, of course, exclude the LFE. Many times you just don't want the LFE to trigger your compression, so you can exclude it completely, or you can turn it down. You can also exclude it here from everything. And of course, you can also, if you choose to have the LFE in your processing, and you, after compression, you are not very satisfied with the now balance between the LFE channel and the rest of the mix, you can still adjust it here. So that's no problem at all. And yeah, that's regarding LFE. And this is a very quick overview of Gravitas as a compressor. Of course, you have also many nice other features. You can filter which part of the signal you actually want to compress or expand. You can unlink both filter sections here, and on the bottom the filter section actually gives you the possibility to filter the signal which is going into the detector. So the bottom section is the detector section, the middle section is the actual processing section, and you have a very nice button here which is the listen to the detector. I can also access it here. So if I click that, we will just listen to what is going into the detector, so that we can actually fine tune the signal which later on should trigger our compression. Okay, let's check the drums. So after turning it off, the listen button, you hear back the actually processed signal. And yeah, there's a lot of more, there are lots more of things to discover in Gravitas. So I just encourage you to watch our tutorials and our mixing tip videos to really get to know all the bells and whistles of Gravitas, but that should give you a nice overview of the extremely powerful, and compared to all the other solutions or non-solutions, possibilities you have to actually tackle your entire Atmos mix or parts of that right before the Dolby Atmos renderer. And yeah, I know that many people will ask, is there only Gravitas in the master channel? The answer is yes. In the moment, yes. But not for long. Wait and see. So if you have any question, just leave it in the chat, or if you come later, or if you don't see it live now, then we will also react to your questions if you leave them in the comments of this video, or if you just send us an email through the web page. So now let's check out the chat. Skating Dog Production said the assembler is indeed Mac OS only. Yeah, that's another thing. So what on Windows? Oh, as Steve Jobs said, there's one more thing. Let's close that. I almost forgot, my dear. There's the mastering console. How can I forget? The mastering console is an application where you can load in ADM files You can also do the same in the Dolby Atmos Composer, but for those who are not using the Dolby Atmos Composer, they can instead use the mastering console. And it's also more convenient because you don't have to fire up your DAW to actually be working on an ADM file. So I already loaded up an ADM file. I can make play here, if I can. I just have to select the right audio interface, which is this one. Now we should hear something. Yeah, but we also need to set it to binaural. So now we are talking, and the mastering console is working very similar to the Dolby Atmos Composer. You also have a master channel, you have the loudness measurement, you have the master gain, you can load up Gravitas, as you can see here. And you can master your ADM files in case you just want to give it a final touch or you want to change something. Of course, the mastering console, you can also change other stuff. You can change binaural mode of any channel. You can change the description. You can change groups in case you are using it. You can change the global metadata. You can set the downmix settings. You can set the trim values, and of course, you can re-export everything as ADM BWF files or as re-renders, even simultaneously. So that gives you a lot of choices how to really master your mix. So in the Dolby Atmos Composer, you can do the bus processing for mixing, and in the mastering console, you can use it on an already done Dolby Atmos mix for mastering. So let's see what we have in the chat.
Can you close the application window so that people can see you again? I would like to add 2 things, and that's first of all, you can load a number of Gravitas into the module section, so you don't have to just stick with one instance of Gravitas for your mastering, also in the mastering console. And there was a question regarding presets. There are a lot of presets coming with Gravitas ready to go. And then on top of that, you can use, if you have several instances of Gravitas in the Dolby Atmos Composer or in the master console, you can use, of course, filters to work on several on certain frequency bands as well, if you want to feature some objects in some frequency areas as well. So that's very, very powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, presets. You can basically load and save presets inside Gravitas. That's correct, for your settings, for the individual compressor settings. But you can also load and save an entire chain as a preset. So if you have a preferred way of doing things, like if a preferred chain of compressor settings or something like that, you can actually save the entire chain. And you can also transfer these. So if you have saved something in the compressor, you can load it up in the mastering console, and vice versa. So these entire chain presets work, of course, across different mixes, and they work, of course, across different ADM files. The only thing you need to check if you're using the same thing for the same chain preset for different mixes is the input configuration of Gravitas, because if you have different channels and different layouts in the different mixes, then, well, you need to check that. But otherwise, all the other settings and the order of the modules, that is kept intact, so that you have a good basis to have a good starting point for next projects when you already have something done prior to that.
Here are a couple of questions regarding how it would work, how Gravitas would work with the Dolby renderer. Well, that's a completely different can of worms, but you have an answer for that, Thomas.
Of course. The Gravitas works outside the Gravitas is not only a module. Gravitas is a plugin. You can have it as a VST3 audio unit and AAX plugin on both Windows and Mac, and you can place it anywhere. You can place plugins. So you can use it anywhere basically, but this specific workflow, like using it one instance on the entire Dolby Atmos mix, as that what I have shown you now, is only possible in the composer and in the mastering console. Why? Because all the other Dolby Atmos workflows, be it the external renderer application or the internal renderers inside the different DAWs like Pro Tools, Nuendo, Cubase, Studio One and Logic, they have internal renderers. They don't give you, they don't provide an access point which sits right in front of the renderer and after the Dolby Atmos mix has already been basically created. Because you need to, there are two phases of creating a Dolby Atmos mix on the technical side. First, you create the Atmos mix in form of the up to 128 channels. And this mix is then processed by the renderer so that you can actually hear it in a meaningful way. So mixing actually happens before the renderer. The Dolby Atmos mix is created before the renderer. And this can be understood easily when you think about different channels being penned onto the bed or composite. So then they get mixed together, they get spanned out onto the different channels of the bed or composite, and that then gets rendered by the actual Dolby Atmos renderer, be it the built-in or the external application. But since there is neither Dolby nor the different DAW manufacturers provide any access point where I can possibly put the Gravitas plugin, there's no way of doing it in any other place than the Dolby Atmos composer and the mastering console.
Yeah, right. There was just a question if it's possible to load two Gravitas in and use one for working on the drums and the other one for...
Yes, yes, of course.
And I just answered here in the text, maybe you can even enhance that, because you just need to select or deselect the tracks you don't want to work on with, for example, the second instance of Gravitas for a mix as an option, for example.
Yeah, this is what I want. What I was showing in the input selector, where you can actually select which track you want to process, which track you want to go into the detector, and when you do that, this is valid for the Gravitas instance you are actually doing that adjustment for, and the result of everything is then available in the next Gravitas or in the next module below that. So you can use the first Gravitas instance to work on the drums, the second to work on the guitars, the third to work on the vocals, and the fourth to actually do work on everything together. Let's just give the whole thing the final touch. So you can basically load as many Gravitas instances as your CPU can eat.
Bon appetit.
Bon appetit, yeah.
So let's have another look at the chat here. I have it on my iPhone. It seems to me that everybody is pretty happy for the moment, except for some questions regarding the UI. I don't know if you want to address this or...
What is the question? Let's see.
Well, we heard it... Well, we hear this every once in a while, that depending on your screen size and the settings of the screen, it's about the contrast and also the size of the UI. There are some questions.
We have planned to once we upgrade the different applications, be it the composer, be it mastering console, be it Gravitas, to make the GUI resizable. So that is, we hear you. We don't ignore you. We hear you. It just requires some work. We have a lot of features on our feature list for upcoming versions, so this is definitely among them and will definitely come. So no worries. Stay tuned. This will come.
Wonderful. So, what else can you wish from the maker of your favorite Dolby Atmos tools?
Hopefully.
Yeah. And I think we've covered so far everything regarding, doing dynamics work the only way for Dolby Atmos mixes with the Dolby Atmos composer with Gravitas and the mastering console in Gravitas. So, of course, they are all available on the website. There are trial versions, so please go ahead and check these out.
We still have black days until 15th of December, so if you want to catch them with a good price, now's the time.
Yeah, until this, until the 15th, right?
Until the 15th, yeah.
Sunday night.
Sunday. Yeah.
Early Monday morning, so to say. So let it be an Atmos Monday, latest. And, so Thomas, you're a god.
I wouldn't go that far.
How heavy is each Gravitas instance on the CPU? I'd use M4 Pro.
Well, I think M4 Pro, you got lots. You can do lots of. I have an M1 Max here, and I once made a test. And how was it? It was really a ton. It was. I think I used a 128 channel mix. And I could hook up at least 4 instances before it starts crackling. That makes a total of 512 channels. Something like that on an M1 Max. So M4 Pro is more powerful. So you get anywhere you want, basically. Usually, 4 instances which process the entire mix of 128 channels is not something you actually will do. And if you say, okay, I will put one instance only for the drums, and the drums are only 16 channels, and the rest is I will not touch, I will not process, then this Gravitas will actually only process 16 channels. So it will not be taxing your CPU like the full 128 channels, but only the 16 channels. So even if you have big mixes, you will be able to load more instances of Gravitas.
Yeah, and I can, one second, and I can report, I think it was 2 shows ago, where I think it was the same track, The War of Roses, and the full project with running through the bus system on Logic, and I had 4 Gravitas in the master section with the Dolby Atmos composer, and we were doing Zoom, and we were doing streaming via OBS here, so that happened all on an M3 laptop. So it's definitely doable and possible. And the computers these days are very, very powerful, and you should find your way around that and find a nice workflow so that you don't have to make too many compromises.
Yeah.
And there just came something else on, a longer question. Let me have a look. Harrison Mixbus 10 Pro doesn't have an LFE. How big of a problem is that for Atmos mixing? Should I upgrade to the Pro version of the Studio One with its Dolbus, or the Pro version of Studio One?
I can say something about it. The Dolby Atmos in Mixbus 10 is very rudimentary. It's meant for people who just want to start out. So, but you can use the composer in Mixbus. If you like Mixbus, you can just use the composer in Mixbus instead of the built-in rudimentary Dolby Atmos version, and that will give you an LFE channel. The only thing you need to do is you create a bus, and a mono bus, and you put one beam onto it. You switch that beam to LFE, and then you can send everything you want to that bus, and it will turn out. It will turn up on the LFE channel in your Dolby Atmos mix inside the composer. This is one simple LFE workflow which you can use in any DAW. So it's not only mix bus but also other DAWs. The stereo only DAWs like Ableton and Bitwig and so forth. They all, no stereo only double DAW has an LFE, but with this simple workflow, bus, a beam on it set to LFE, and that's going to the composer. You can have an LFE channel, a very customizable LFE channel on any DAW in your Dolby Atmos mix. You should, however, put before the beam a low pass, because by default it's not low passed, but you should low pass it onto before going onto the Dolby Atmos mix. This is the way how Dolby Atmos mix is done when it comes to LFE. And the LFE, well, you can do mixes without LFE, but it's not recommended, because the LFE gives you really some additional way of doing bass in a very controlled way. Because you need to think that many systems out there, they have a fairly decent subwoofer, but the satellite boxes, as we used to call it, are not very capable of playing back bass. So in that way, you need to really think about that. If you don't have an LFE, you might get very much less bass than if you actually use the LFE. Of course, you need to use it carefully, not to go too much, because otherwise the mix will sound boomy. But it's recommended to do so, because also summing the bass frequencies onto one channel has the advantage that you can immediately hear if there are some phase problems. If you have a full-blown speaker setup with full-range speakers all over, and you give bass frequencies, bass frequencies, you might end up triggering different room modes in the listening environment of the listener, which might not give very pleasant results. People who have the money and buy a speaker layout, they typically also use their money or their time to little bit tune their room, and they typically put the subwoofer in a place where the bass becomes pleasant. And if you don't play back the bass through that, but through some other speakers, it might not be as optimal as with using the LFE. So it's recommended to use the LFE. And you can also monitor the LFE on headphones through binaural, because the LFE is rendered through binaural. You just need to know that if you switch to stereo, the LFE is left out. Don't ask me why. Dolby decided to not render the LFE channel to any kind of stereo, but to binaural it is rendered, so you can actually also listen to what happens on LFE when you are working with headphones.
Aha, so I didn't realize that. So even with the new, direct stereo, the LFE is left out?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, well, yeah, so then
yeah, it's interesting. Well, I haven't tested it actually. I mean the regular stereo is definitely left out. I have to check if in Stereo Direct it's also left out, but I'm almost sure it is, which is a little bit weird, because the idea of Stereo Direct was, or is, that you actually in some point you don't mix in stereo first and then do an Atmos version, but you do an Atmos. You mix an Atmos natively, like this is your to-go way of mixing, and then you create a stereo version of it, just because you need a stereo version also, but your main mix is in Atmos. So the Stereo Direct is intended to that workflow, and I have to check actually. I'm not sure, but I'm almost sure it's not showing up there. Who knows why?
Yeah, I did realize that, and I was always wondering why the oomph is not in the stereo version, and
Yeah.
so that renders the promise of doing Atmos first and then taking the stereo after your Atmos mix is done from it is not really working, because you would have to work on the low end situation of that stereo mix then to be on par with what's out there and
Yeah.
what people expect from a stereo mix. That's pretty interesting.
Okay, the another question is here, as I can see. So it will work in Reason Studios. What is Beam and how I do it? Yeah, it works in Reason, and we have example sessions in the knowledge base on our homepage, where you can download an example session for Reason, for any kind of, well, most major DAWs. And it's the same. It's, by the way, the same song which I used for this video. You can download there. It's a full mixing session with the composer and the Dolby Atmos Beam in Reason Studios.
Cool. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff there. Again, it's the knowledge base on the Fiedler Audio website under the Dolby Atmos Composer. You find a lot of tutorial stuff there for the various DAWs, and also with content. I think that's very important. We tend to forget that, because once we had the great opportunity to lay our hands on the track, the War of Roses, for example, kudos to Mr. Jörg Hüttner in Los Angeles. You have access to this full multi-track project you can use and play around with, and be free to go to town immediately, so you don't have to come up with your own stuff and need to meticulously draw some stuff in there. So it's ready to go. That's very convenient. Yeah, and let's see, is there anything else, or are we ready to wrap it up? So the last post in the chat was, thank you.
So it would be useful to send some of the LFE to left and right as a safety net. I think if you intend to do the mixing workflow starting with Atmos and then deriving a stereo version of it, you might need to experiment which works both, what works best, so to say. So, and in case of doubt, just do your Atmos mix as you want to do your Atmos mix, and period. And when you do your stereo version and you feel there's not enough bass in the stereo version, then you just give it a little bit of LFE to the front, left, and right channels. And yeah, that's it basically. Otherwise, you also need to know that, yeah, basically that's it. Yeah, the binaural is not important for stereo. So yeah, basically that, when you then get your stereo version out of it, you might want to do that, but you have to experiment. You have to find out. I think it's dependent also on the mix.
Okay. Yeah. Wonderful. So, yeah, as I said, what?
Will mixing music in Atmos make sense? I asked. Yeah, why not? Why shouldn't it? I mean, that's the idea of why Apple Music, Amazon Music, Tidal, they support streaming in Atmos. So because it really makes sense, and it has the potential to give you really a greater experience than stereo. And in the end, it just depends on the mixing skills. But the possibility is there. I just encourage you to, wherever you get the chance, to listen to something in Atmos, and to some good mixes in Atmos, and get acquainted with it. Try it out on speakers, try it out on headphones, and see what inspires you.
And if you find music mixes in Atmos out there you're not so happy about, just do your stuff better, because
Yes.
this guy provides the tools that would enable you to do better, and that would be good for the entire story as well, because the community, the audience out there will really get a kick out of exciting Dolby Atmos mixes.
Yeah.
And a lot
Don't
of
be
stuff.
Don't be surprised if you find mixes from famous bands and famous mixing engineers which don't convince you. Don't be surprised. Why? First, because mixing in Atmos is in its infancy, even for the professionals. I can just repeat the story of the Beatles and their first stereo album, where when stereo came out first, then they just hard panned drums left, vocals right, and everything was like, if you listened on speakers, you can cope with the experience, but on headphones it's extremely weird. So that was the head start with stereo, until someone left two microphones open in a recording room. I don't know who it was, but someone left two microphones just placed there in the recording room, open. One of the microphones panned hard left, or the other panned hard right. So you had basically a stereo recording and listening it live to, and someone was doing something or playing an instrument there, and he was like, "What is that?" Suddenly you had a stage, suddenly you had position in the stage, suddenly you had some reverb, you had some depth, and all that which we are so used to today. It was like Wonderland for the people when stereo started out. And well, so Atmos has the potential to become the new Wonderland compared to stereo, but we have to get there. So, and this is all a question of our mixing skills, and well, with Spacelab, the immersive reverb which immediately connects to Dolby Atmos Composer on any DAW, and immersive reverb which is extremely easy to use on any DAW, plus Composer, plus Gravitas, plus Mastering Console. You have the entire tool set to create compelling mixes.
And we are looking very, very forward to listen to them.
Of course.
To hear them. And I'm sure the audience is, and the guys at Dolby Labs are, the guys at Apple are, and it's it's a new thing. It's like going to Mars. It's a new endeavor, and we need to find our ways, our paths, our workflows, and our MOs for the most best way to get there and bring a great music experience to the people. And there's a big potential. So let's all work on this.
Yeah, there's more questions I see. Will producing music in Atmos have to be done in mono and sent to multiple speaker locations? What's the correct way to make music in Atmos? The answer to this is whatever sounds good is correct. So you can use, of course, mono sources, but you can also use stereo sources and place these channels apart. Many mixers, for example, what is done nowadays is the Dolby Atmos speaker layouts have basically speakers in pairs. You have the front left and right, you have the wide left and right, you have the side left and right, you have the rear left and right, and you have 3 pairs on the top if you take the 916 speaker layout as an example. So if you have stereo sources, you can place them in speaker pairs, whatever suits you best. Or you on adjacent speakers around you, you can also place stereo sources. And of course, you also have the possibility, if you are recording for an Dolby Atmos production, you can record in multi-channel, or you can record in ambisonics and convert that to multi-channel. So you have a ton of different possibilities of what you can do, how you can a ton of different signal types you can get into your Dolby Atmos mix. So there are people who record in 916 or in other multi-channel formats and do Atmos mixes from that. There's one, Tom, correct me. Morten Lindgren, or what's the last name of this guy from 2L in Norway? He's doing very amazing classical recordings in very spacious environments in just no.
He's recording with a Decca tree, I think.
Well, he has his own he developed his own recording layouts, if you will. Let me just see here. Morten Lindberg. Yeah, that's the one. You can look him up in the internet. He has a label called 2L, just 2L, 2 the number and L the letter, in Norway, and he's doing some amazing work in Atmos, just with live recordings of ensembles in churches and other great sounding venues. This is one way of doing it, but also you can do electronic music or heavy metal or whatever you want. There are different approaches depending on the music style. So you have all the freedom in the world. And then I see another question. Sound Particles recently, about 2 months ago, alluded to introducing a new headphones type device to help those who have ears don't respond well to headphone ambisonics. Have you heard updates? No, not really. I have to look that up, actually. Yeah. Thanks, Blue Marble Sound. Lindberg is the right word.
Mm-hmm. Cool. All right. So, please let us know about additional questions and stuff under the video when it is going to be transferred from the live stream to the steady playback. And we would say thanks a lot, I guess. Thanks a lot to Thomas for the amazing tools and also the presentation today with all these compressor tricks and workflows. And see you soon. Maybe, I think the next one would be then, if I'm correct, would this be
next year
in the holidays? So you're taking a rain check or a snow check, most probably here in Germany in winter.
Yeah.
So we might be back in the first week of 2025 for the next live stream on Feed.
Yeah. Well, one last question I see here. If you have already binaural sound and you want to get it into Atmos, you need to check if this binaural track actually sounds good on speakers. If not, most binaural tracks actually sound a bit weird on speakers. So Atmos means it is supposed to be a format agnostic format, meaning it's meant to be played back on different speaker layouts. Well, you can of course bring your binaural track into Atmos and play it back perfectly in binaural. But then what about all the speaker layouts? What about soundbars? What about all the other ways of playing back Atmos? So you need to think about what you actually want to do with your binaural track on speakers, and if it makes sense to play it back on speakers. But technically, a binaural track is just stereo, and of course you can bring it into Dolby Atmos.
So it's been a great 2024. Yes, indeed. Very exciting, and let's look forward to 2025 with more tools, more workflows, and more great music mixed and produced for Dolby Atmos.
By you.
With the Fiedler audio tools, by you, indeed. So, all right. So let's wrap this up, and we'll see you soon. If you have something you want to share, let us know on the social channels and via email, and otherwise we'll see you again with a stream in the next year. All right.
Okay.
Take care.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.